Hey guys, I'm Chris Damaris, and today Sony has given us a look at what's under the hood of the PS4 with a full teardown video from their engineering director, Yasuhiro Utori. A few highlights are the hard drive's removable cover section for easy replacement, and that the internal components all use screws. No plastic clips or glue to worry about. And similar to the PS3, the power supply is entirely internal, which means you shouldn't have to worry about lugging around a giant brick attached to the power cord. Yay! The PS4 is running an 8-core AMD Jaguar processor, an AMD Radeon GPU, and 8 gigs of GDDR5 RAM with a 500GB internal hard drive. If 500 gigs isn't enough for you, remember that Sony has said you can freely replace it with any 5400 RPM SATA 2 hard drive, no thicker than 9.5 millimeters, as long as it's at least 160 gigs. I once had a girl actually tell me the exact same specifications. No thicker than 9.5 millimeters, at least 160 gigs, and had to promise not to tell her friends about us. However, there may be some wiggle room for the hard drive in the PS4 if you're feeling daring. A German teardown believes you may be able to use a drive as thick as 12.5 millimeters, and a number of people are investigating the viability of solid-state drives. But there's no guarantee these will work, so if you want to play it safe, just stick with Sony specs. As my mom always used to say. As sexy as the hardware is, the software it runs is also a pretty big deal, and Sony has updated their software launch list. They'll now have 23 titles out on November 15th. New additions include Trine 2, The Complete Story, Blacklight Retribution, Super Motherload, and Need for Speed Rivals. These will take the place of a few that have flipped, like Tiny Brains and Pinball Arcade. Sony's also announced that PS4 will have 11 entertainment apps available when it launches. Expect to see Amazon TV, Crackle, Epix, Hulu Plus, NBA Game Time, Netflix, NHL Game Center, Live, Redbox Instant, Vudu, Yap TV, and Crunchyroll. The full app lineup won't necessarily be available worldwide though. You only get them in countries where those services are normally available. Moving on, Capcom Vancouver has confirmed that their Xbox One exclusive, Dead Rising 3, will run at a locked 30 frames per second in 720p, and that the game wouldn't be possible on current generation consoles or the Nintendo 64. Executive producer Josh Bridge explains, "We couldn't have done this on last gen. Absolutely not. We tried. Believe me, we tried to figure out how not to have load reach, but we couldn't." He attributes it largely to the size of the world. Dead Rising 3 is enormous. The worlds from Dead Rising 1 and 2 would fit into it several times over. So it's great that it's a big world and all, but with this next evolution in hardware, why is it only running at 720p and not 1080? That's because of the sheer amount of stuff happening on screen all at the same time. The move from 720p to 1080p is pretty significant from a development resource perspective, and they felt getting a consistent frame rate was the real priority. "It's more important that the end image looks awesome. Look at how much stuff is on screen. That's always been a Dead Rising sort of brand. That still looks really good, and that's been our goal," Bridge says. Good for you, Bridge. Good for you. Finally, the BBC has confirmed that the 2 final Doctor Who games in the planned Eternity Clock trilogy have been cancelled. So, probably not going to make much of a trilogy with only having the one game. The first game, Doctor Who The Eternity Clock, was developed by Supermassive Games and released last year on PS3, Vita, and PC. The game featured the Doctor and River Song racing across the universe to prevent its destruction. Really, an average day for the Doctor, and theoretically a lot of fun for Whovians. Except that it wasn't. The game was widely criticized for its poor mechanics, game-breaking bugs, and failing to capture the feel of the hugely popular TV show. As a result, the 2 final games in the trilogy have been canned, but that doesn't mean we won't see future games featuring everyone's favorite Time Lord, because we will, just not with that studio. BBC's Paul Joff confirms, "We will not be releasing any further Eternity Clock games, nor did any other go into production. We do have Doctor Who games in the pipeline, and we will be announcing these in due course." And that's the news today. Are you planning on swapping out the hard drive on your PS4? What is your mass zombie execution strategy for Dead Rising 3? And what should the next Doctor Who game be about? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to check out roosterteeth.com where we're debuting the Volume 1 finale of RWBY tonight. And then on a completely side note, I did this entire newscast with no pants on. So that's the news for today.